Okay. Okay, well, welcome back to Game of Thrones. We didn't have a white winter. If y'all watched Game of Thrones, y'all know what that meant. That was
Well, we did.
where the five kingdoms all had wars and pretty much everybody died. So,
We didn't have a white winter.
right. Didn't have a white winter. But we are in Daniel chapter 8 today. But in order to understand where that fits in chronologically, the last time we met, we went through chapter 6 and 7. Daniel is not written in chronological order. Okay, so we're jumping around a little bit. We initially did chapters 1 through 4, and then we jumped to 6 and 7. Now we're doing 8. We're going to do 8 and 5 today. The reason being is the reason we know it's not written in chronological order is because from external sources we know who ruled what kingdoms when. Well, Daniel gives us clues as to who's leading what kingdom in his time. And so sometimes he's saying Nebuchadnezzar, sometimes he's saying Belshazzar, sometimes he's saying Cyrus or Darius. He served under two Babylonian kings. Well, actually 5, but the 3 in the middle were very, very short-lived. When Nebuchadnezzar died, there were 3, he had 4 sons. 3 of them ruled very, very shortly. His 4th son, Belshazzar, is the one who ended up ruling the kingdom for the longest. Well, when Belshazzar, when his rule ended, the Medes and Persians came in. I can't remember if it's Cyrus or Darius. I think it was Cyrus comes in, and they conquer the Babylonian Empire. And then when Cyrus dies, Darius takes over. And that is where the Jews are then allowed to go back to their homeland. The exile ends under the Medo-Persian rule. So we are at the we're in the midst. The chapters 1 through 4 are Nebuchadnezzar. That's where Nebuchadnezzar went crazy. Remember, he had the dream. Daniel was the only one who could interpret it.
Yeah.
And he said, you're going to go crazy for a little while. And for 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar disappeared. During that 7 years is when those 3 other sons ruled. He had been out there so long, he was eating grass like cattle. His fingernails, toenails had grown beyond, description. His hair was scraggly. Those are descriptions in Daniel. And then he comes back briefly before he dies. And then his 4th son, Belshazzar, becomes king. And so today, now under Belshazzar, then we get these, Daniel has these visions. The one that we last talked about had to do with the visions of the 4 beasts. Y'all remember those? There were 4 beasts. One was a lion, one was a bear, one was an eagle, and one was a leopard. And we talked about how each of those could be interpreted in a few different ways, depending on what your viewpoint of eschatology was, or if you even believed in an eschatological viewpoint. Maybe it was just a historical viewpoint. End times. When I say eschatology, I'm talking end times, Revelation stuff. But Revelation it's not the only one. The book of Revelation is in the Bible. It is called an apocalyptic literature. Well, it's not the only apocalyptic text there. It's the only book that's specifically apocalyptic. But Daniel has visions of that. Ezekiel has visions of that. Most of the prophets do in some form or fashion. So he had these 4 visions, or had these visions of these beasts. And one of them was these were his visions, but it goes back to a vision that Nebuchadnezzar originally had about a big giant statue where the head was gold, the chest was bronze, the legs were iron, and the feet were clay mixed with iron. And we talked about that a while back. Okay? And what that was, and pretty much every scholar agrees that, well, I say every scholar agrees, Daniel interprets it, and that's why every scholar does, is that these were 4 kingdoms that were going to be in succession. And so the gold meant that was going to be the Babylonian Empire, and then the bronze was going to be the Medo-Persians coming in, and then the iron was going to be the Greeks, and under Alexander, and then the mixed the iron mixed with clay was going to be the Roman Empire. So, and by the way, that was from head to foot in that way. So it gets worse as they go along. And so the foot of this statue is the weakest part of the whole statue. So as they go along, the kingdoms become weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. Of course, we know the history of the Roman Empire, and they were there a long time. They were very strong. The Pax Romana, for lack of description, kept the peace for the point of the sword 400 years. Yeah, so 500 years. Well, more than that. So so here we are. Nebuchadnezzar's dead. Belshazzar is the king, and Daniel starts having visions. And this is one of those visions. We previously read about his vision of the 4 beasts. Now he's having another vision about a ram and a goat. And so here we're going to go into that. Could you hear everything I said?
Yes.
Okay, good. That tells me that webcam's working, because that's got a microphone on it too. So let me go to share screen here, and here we go. Here. Okay. So, oh, and see what else we're going to get into? Ooh, the lion's den. Okay. Oh, I got that really large. You're going to have to read, you're going to have to interpret your own letters there on the beginnings of the things. So here we are in Daniel 8. If someone wants to read those 2 verses, sorry about the words.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. And I looked in the vision, and it came about while I was looking that I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Ulai Canal.
Okay, so he is in a specific location. He is in a fortified city of the Babylonian Empire. Okay. So here we go. Here, and we're going to move you out of the way here.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Verses 3 through 4.
3 through 4. I looked up, and there before me was a ram with 2 horns standing beside the canal, and the horns were long. One of the horns were longer than the others, but grew up later. I watched the ram as it charged toward the west and the north and the south. No animal could stand against it, and none could rescue from its power. It did as it pleased and became great.
Okay. So you see this ram that has 2 horns, and they grow kind of at the same pace, but then one of them all of a sudden just becomes larger than the other, greater than the other. And what do we've talked about this before. What do horns represent theologically in a non-literal?
Not strength.
Strength or power.
Okay.
Power, strength or power.
Okay.
So well, we're going to find out. Okay. Well, we're going to let you interpret that, but I'm going to give you 4 options here in a little bit. So, I watched, and then Daniel in his vision, this ram with these horns, and one grows suddenly larger, and then that ram charges toward the west and the north and the south. You notice it doesn't charge towards the east. Why do you think that is?
Because that's the holy something.
Well, that's where it came from.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go backwards, all right.
They didn't know what was.
No animal could stand against it.
Okay.
Well, animal in this case would be any other kingdom. And of course, those images apply even today. When we think of America, what animal do we think of? The eagle. What about Russia?
The bear.
The bear. See, so So, and for Israel, it's a lion. So there are, each, right, we still, even in our current context, think of nations in terms of animals. So no
What about
animal
the
can
ram?
stand against it. None
What
can
about-
rescue from its power.
What about the ram?
We're gonna find
What
out.
does that make us think of? We're gonna find
We're gonna find out.
He's an English teacher.
We can interpret now that it is a country. We can interpret it now that it's a powerful country,
out. Okay.
but we haven't determined which one yet. Okay? And then it did as it pleased and became great. Well, that sounds like Pope me, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, verses 5 and 6.
As I was thinking about this, suddenly a goat of prominent horn between his eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground. He came toward the two-horned ram I had seen standing beside the canal and charged at him in a great rage.
Okay,
Hmm.
so now you've got a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes. So we got a unicorn goat,
Unicorn goat, yeah.
and it's not even touching the ground.
Hmm.
So what would you think that would mean in a non-literal sense?
Jehoshaphat.
Flying.
Well,
And
yeah,
It's
but
going so fast,
it's,
or it's.
it is on a mission. It's not stopping to conquer
Okay,
other
okay.
nations.
Yeah.
It is going straight from point A to point B, and at point B is charging at the ram in great rage. Okay, that's its goal. So it's not stopping for anything else. It's aiming directly at the ram. Then it gets-
Wait a minute now.
Well, I can't back up
I
now.
thought we were talking about the goat. No,
First-
ram,
first it
I'm
was a
sorry,
ram.
ram,
First it was a ram.
ram, okay.
Then I read about a goat.
The ram came out of the east.
Okay.
The goat came out of the west.
West, all right, they're
I-
rams after the goat, okay,
Right.
gotcha.
So someone get 7 and 8.
I saw it attack the ram furiously, striking the ram and shattering its two horns. The ram was powerless to stand against it. The goat knocked it to the ground and trampled on it, and none could rescue the ram from its power. The goat became very great, but at the height of its power, the large horn was broken off, and in its place, 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven.
Our history person, does any of this
Sounds
start to make
almost
a
like
little sense?
Alexander.
Ah, okay, so if you have interpreted the goat as Alexander,
Ah,
who would the ram be?
Well,
Who
that would
did,
have to be the Persians, wouldn't it?
yeah, that whole.
the
Medes
Medo
and the
I knew
Persian
it, by gosh, the
Empire.
ram,
Yeah.
I
The
knew it, I
Medo
knew
Persian
it,
Empire.
yeah.
The Medes were the lesser of the 2 horns. The Persians were the greater of the 2.
Okay, that's a ram.
Okay,
And
So-
so the 4 kingdoms would be after Alexander.
after Alexander
You'd
died.
have the Seleucids, the Ptolemaic, the Medea, and I don't remember. what the
Yep,
fourth
and
one
we're
was.
gonna get into that in just a little bit. Yep.
Grace.
Okay.
Okay. So it's starting to make sense now, right? So it's not a literal sense, but it is a figurative and historical sense. Okay, so 9 and 10.
Question, when
Yep,
was Alexander the Great?
around,
300 or something.
yeah, 300, 200, yeah. Okay,
9 and 10, out of them, one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the hosts of the heavens and threw some of the starry hosts down to earth and trampled on them.
okay.
Alexander.
Well, out of those 4, it's saying that one of them came another horn and it started small, but it grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land. Now, what would the beautiful land
Could be Israel.
be? Israel. Right?
Israel?
Mhm. Beautiful land. would be
That's
Israel.
their homeland, so
The
it's
beau-
homeland, so it was.
The horn, the power nation here is going toward the beautiful land. This is gonna be the-
They're heading south then, rather than east.
This is gonna be the Roman Empire, correct?
Mhm.
This horn is going to be the Roman Empire. Out of those 4 horns after Alexander, another horn started small, but grew until it became powerful and
Yeah,
it
but
went
300,
east.
okay,
and
that's
south.
okay.
Yeah.
But they said that Rome began somewhere in the 700s. Yeah.
So that would be the
Yeah,
Roman.
and the 300s. Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And it says here, the little horn came out of Greece.
Oh,
First
That would
Antiochus
be,
Epiphanes.
Macedonia.
And it threw some of the starry hosts down to the earth and trampled on them. Now, what do you think that means?
Somebody get wiped out.
Well, but
Or-
why the
or
starry
conquer.
host?
Why the what?
Why
Starry
describe it as
host.
the starry host?
Coming from heaven.
Was it destroying the gods of other entities?
Right, instead of a political empowerment, a political overthrow, strictly nationally imposed. Now we're talking about a more religious
Huh.
type of thing that is starting to happen.
And who's doing this? Alexander?
Well, this will be the Romans.
Okay,
This will be the Romans.
okay.
And there's also an eschatological thought here in that out of the Romans would come one who would become against Christ, the Antichrist. And we get that through we get that from extra biblical, Nostradamus, some others that, I can't remember who the guy is who named all the popes up until such and such, but the second Pope Peter will be the Antichrist kind of thing, and they'll come from Rome. So I can't remember who that guy is. I will find that name out for you because that is a neat read to go through and see just how accurate they were 1400 years before all this happened. So, it ended at Francis, by the way. So, and then Pope Peter came, but there's a gap there, so they don't know what else was in there. Okay, so there is an eschatological thing that if we're talking about the Antichrist, the starry host being thrown down to earth, that now we're talking about what Peter describes in his letters as Satan being thrown to earth, and what John describes as the tail of the dragon sweeping the stars of the earth, stars of the heavens and throwing them down to earth. We're getting an eschatological image here. So, okay. 11 and 12.
It even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down.
Mhm.
And on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn, along with the regular sacrifice, and it will flame truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper.
Okay.
That sounds like a dictatorship of Rome there.
Correct, but what it's describing could be two specific events, because one of them has happened, one of them has not. Okay, again, we've got a yes, but not yet, now but not yet kind of thing. So who took away the daily sacrifice?
God.
It could be one of two things. Number one, it was either Antiochus Epiphanes who basically defamed the temple, or it could be Titus who destroyed the temple in 70 AD. We don't know which one of those two it is, but it's one of those that they're describing. The eschatological viewpoint will be at the end times, when where some would count a rapture, and then the church is no longer on earth and the temple is destroyed in that figurative sense. But okay, so we've got several visions all working together here. 13 through 14.
Then I heard a holy one speaking. Another holy one said to me, how long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled? The vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the rebellions that cause dissolution, and the surrender of sanctuary and the host that will be trampled underfoot.
14.
Oh, he said to me, it will take 2,300 evenings and mornings, and then the sanctuary will be
Reconsecrated. Okay, so that almost points directly at Antiochus Epiphanes. If we do the math, at, now we're getting a little literal, this is where evangelicals go. So,
You're trying to think how many
it's 2,300 days is about 6.25 years.
yeah, 6-7 years.
Okay. Yeah, it all gets very, very interesting. Until the sanctuary is reconsecrated. 15 and 16. Now, there were two holy ones in that previous thing. We don't know there was a holy one, then there was another holy one talking. We don't know whether that was God, whether that was an Old Testament form of Jesus. We don't know whether that was two angels. We just know that it was a holy one and then another.
Well, the letter is, the H is small in my version. Does that matter? Wouldn't be God if it was.
Well, it depends. It depends. Mhm.
15
Mhm.
and 16. While I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there before me stood one who looked like a man. And I heard a man's voice from the Ulai calling, Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision.
Okay,
Yeah, it is.
so he sees a man standing there, or one who looked like a man, and then there's another voice from the river, Ulai, coming from the river, saying, Gabriel. So the man standing in front of Daniel is Gabriel. Now, do we know what Gabriel does? What's our understanding?
He
of
brought
Gabriel?
important messages to various individuals.
He is God's
Yeah.
messenger.
Yeah.
So he's a messenger
Came to
angel.
Mary.
Every time we see Gabriel, he is delivering a message. And that seems to be his sole purpose.
Mhm.
So whoever the man's voice from the Ulai, that could be God, that could be Jesus, the Holy Spirit in some form. Tell this man the meaning of the vision. We get a very similar action that happens in Revelation when John's talking to the angel. The angel took him, in the spirit to such and such, and explain, and you hear a voice from the throne saying, explain to him what all this is. Okay. Although that never says Gabriel, but yeah, maybe it is.
It's either him or Michael, one.
So, well, Michael is a
different.
fighter. He's
Yeah.
he's a defender.
Yeah.
17 and 18.
As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified and fell prostrate. Son of man, he said to me, understand the vision concerned with the end of time. While he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and raised me to my feet.
Okay, so as Gabriel comes toward him, Daniel falls down prostrate, and I can only imagine that he fell so hard he hit his head on the ground hard and knocked himself out. And of course, everything he hears now is kind of in a delirious kind of thing. So it all sounds surreal.
Yeah.
But that's just my own thoughts there. I'm adding that to there. But then he raised me to my feet, and we get a very similar image in the book of Revelation. John fell to his knees,
Mhm.
and that angel so told him, get up, you don't bow to me.
Mhm.
So. Okay, 19 through 22. It's kind of long.
He said, I'm going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. The two-horned ram that you saw represent the king of Media and Persia.
In case you didn't know that already.
Yeah.
The shaggy goat is the king of Greece,
Ooh, because you didn't know that already.
and the large horn between his eyes is the first king.
Okay, now there.
The four horns that replace the one that was broken off represent four kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power.
Right.
That'd be the four from Alexander, yeah.
Mhm. So it's all making sense now, right?
Yes, it is.
And we could derive that just knowing from our own history without reading this further, but it's nice that Daniel and Gabriel would explain this to us. Okay, 23 and 24.
And in the later period of their rule, latter period of their rule, with the transgressors have run their course, a king will rise, insolent and skilled in intrigue, and his power will be mighty, but not by his own power. And he will destroy to an extraordinary degree, and prosper and perform his will. He will destroy mighty men and the holy people.
Okay. So in the previous few verses, we got this idea of time of the end or the end time. I posit that this is not, that was specifically not talking about the end times specifically, but rather you'll know this when the end of the age prior to the coming of Jesus, that God will become incarnate. So that's what I posit. However, an argument can be made that it both applies to then and to some future event. Okay. So there's going to be in the latter part of those four, there's going to be a fierce looking king, a master of intrigue. Ooh, I wonder who that could be. And he'll become strong, but he only becomes strong because someone makes him strong.
Mhm.
And he's going to succeed in whatever he does, destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. Okay, 25, I will read this. He will cause deceit to prosper. He will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. So,
It plays into the hands of every evangelical who wants to interpret. They can apply this to Europe, you know?
just wait. Yeah, just wait. I've got a slide in here. Just a couple more slides. You'll see where some of the confusion comes into play because it can be interpreted in so many different ways. 26 and 27.
The vision of the evenings and the mornings that have been given you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future. I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days, and I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision, and it was beyond understanding.
Okay. So we get a very similar statement here that we do in Revelation, where the angel tells John to seal up what you've seen until the appropriate time. And we also get that in Jeremiah too. It's told to seal it up for a time. So, man, I tell you that verse 27, that's a lot like a minister on Sunday morning. After preparing for,
What's that?
It's my phone. They'll leave a message, or they didn't really want to talk to me. The visions that ministers get, to get ready for Sunday morning, the preaching, the music, all that. And then by the time we get done, we're exhausted and we just want to lay there for days. So, okay. Now, 4 fulfillments. These are 4 possibilities. And when I say possibilities, one could be correct, more than one could be correct, all of them could be correct, none of them could be correct. Okay, but this is where it gets difficult in interpretation when we're talking about apocalyptic literature. We don't know until it's happened. So, if we talk about this goat, now keep in mind this was the goat that defeated the ram. Remember, has the one horn, the unicorn, the unihorn. That could be Alexander the Great. That's what we believe it to be in our Western thought. That the one horn is the Alexander the Great. The 4 horns that come from it are Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy, which you mentioned. And the great horn that comes from Seleucus would be Antiochus Epiphanes.
Yeah.
And that was the one that grew out of the 4 that destroyed the temple. Okay. If you look at the Muslim side of this, it could the one horn could be Muhammad, with the 4 horns being Abu Bakr, Amar, Othman, and Ali, and the great horn coming from those, from the Othman, Umayyad Caliphate. So that could be true too. The Roman horn could be Augustus Caesar, with the 4 horns coming from him being Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, and the great horn would be Titus, coming from Nero. Okay, and that would be the destruction of the temple under Titus in 70 AD. What's that?
Say the Roman one again.
Roman one would start with Augustus Caesar.
Okay. Oh, Augustus Caesar. Okay.
And then the 4 horns from him would be Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. And then Titus would be under Nero.
Okay. I try to figure where would you put some of the other ones? The other Roman emperors.
Well, they would have come before that or after that. But we're talking about from the time the great leader comes,
Great leader.
the great horn, till the
67
destruction of the
AD.
temple. That's that.
From Nero to 67 AD.
And then there's what they call this Christian horn that stems from Constantine. Okay, the four horns would be the patriarchs of Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. And then the great horn from that would end up becoming the Pope of Rome.
You could apply that to France.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There are others. These are just the four big ones.
I mean, you could apply it to Russia.
This is why it is very important that we remain careful in how we think and apply these things and dictate that. We've already seen several people who take these things into account and say, well, this is when it's all going to happen. And the timing gets wrong. You know, I remember a book, 88 Reasons Jesus Will Return in 1988.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 1989, he added a chapter to it. And released it. So.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Right now it's a tome.
I'm trying to think, though, they say that they didn't go to the east. Is the east because they said that they were in the east, but even east of them,
well,
are
the
the
ram,
Mongols and the Uyghurs.
the ram came from the east and went west, north, and south.
Okay.
The
that's-
goat, which is what this came from the west and went east.
Okay.
Oh, okay, the goat.
Well, I tried to picture all this in my mind.
And he went east. He didn't go north and south.
Yeah.
He went east to destroy.
Okay, so they went- okay.
Okay.
Okay, so does that help at all? Yes and no. I know. Okay.
Takes you back to your history, that's for sure.
I know,
History, I don't
we're quite a ways into this.
What history? You mean the one I sat there for 4 days, didn't have a clue what she was saying? or what was saying? That's-
So- So, yeah, I like that vision. I'm going, I'm gonna,
No, it was
I was at
something
summer,
for him.
I was at summer camp, she had to go for me, and
Oh,
and I get these,
days.
I get the notes that she took, and it'd be question mark, question mark, question mark. What the hell is this?
What he was talking
I
about.
found a 5-minute video to go over this. And I just, no, I decided not to use it
Oh.
because the first part of it started out wonderful. It was just a nice brief overview of Daniel, where we were at. That's kind of what I gave you today at the beginning. But then all of a sudden it jumped into this children's animated thing, and I'm going, I don't know if this story would be appropriate for children. And then the adults,
Definitely not
the
adults
adults in
then.
my class would go, Michael, what the heck did you just show us? So,
And why?
it had great content. It's just, I didn't like the format it was presented. Okay, so we move on now we're gonna go backward, Ann, into chapter 5. Daniel is not written in chronological order. I almost said alphabetical. In chronological order. So in order to keep things going kind of in a chronology, we're going backward a little bit into
I'm
Daniel
so
5.
confused.
Correct, yeah, these
Poor
these
guy.
Old Testament writers, you know, they wrote it down as they remembered
I
it.
remember,
So,
yeah.
okay, so if someone wants to read, is that just one verse there?
Not very long, no, that's not.
The
one of
wild, Belshazzar,
those.
what starts wild, that's verse 2.
Yeah, Belshazzar
did I go
came
too
to tell the
fast?
great
Okay.
feast.
Yeah, as somebody with I went,
No, that's right, that's okay.
That's 1 and 2, right?
Feast for a
that
thousand
one
of
and
his
two?
nobles, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the thousands.
okay,
When Balthazar, does it start somewhere where yeah,
Yeah,
while
that's two.
Balthazar,
Yeah, that's 1 and 2.
when Balthazar tasted the wine, he gave orders to bring the gold and silver vessels, which Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had laid out of the temple. Had taken out of the temple, I can't read English, which was in Jerusalem, in order that the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines might drink from them.
okay.
Included everybody. didn't it?
So part of that introduction that I didn't talk about, but that video did that I mentioned, had to do with when we got ready to go into chapter 5, was we're starting to hear things about Israel's past. Nebuchadnezzar came in several times to Jerusalem to capture people, to steal from the temple. But you see, he has thrown this great banquet for 1,000 nobles. And what he's using to serve them with are the gold and silver goblets
From the temple.
that they took from the temple
Yeah.
in Jerusalem. So they're using sanctified articles.
Mhm.
That in itself should tell you this does not bode well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 and 4.
So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, of iron, wood, and stone.
Remember what got Israel in trouble?
Something like that.
Yeah.
They were
Right.
looking to other gods. They were
Uh-huh.
putting other gods before,
Yep.
before the God. And, oh my gosh, yeah.
God of iron, wood and stone.
Well, that's interesting. That's
Yes,
interesting
it is
because,
interesting.
because one of Daniel's visions in chapters 1 through 4, I mentioned earlier, talked about that statue where
Oh,
gold,
yeah, uh-huh.
silver, bronze, and, you know.
And
or
wood and
sold.
then, clay, yeah.
And then, right, clay being at the bottom,
Uh-huh.
that the base of the statue was the weakest
Uh-huh.
part of the statue,
Yeah.
which should tell you what should happen to it in the future, that
Mhm.
it's not going to be able to stand.
Nope.
Okay, so on to 5 and 6.
Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale. He was so frightened that his knees knocked together and his legs gave away.
I lied. We're not going into Daniel in the Lion's Den today, but okay. So they see, you know, as they're doing this, a human hand. Can you imagine that? Just a hand
Stretched right on the
stretching
wall.
out, right, and writes on the wall. And yeah, he became a knee knocker.
Yeah, I would too.
Now, it all, you know, I love this because it says near the lampstand in the royal palace. Now, the lampstand would be also one of those utensils that came from the. Okay, the king, some of the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to these wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom.
That's when the fellow went to Daniel.
Right. They couldn't read it. Now, why do you think they couldn't read it?
Probably in a language they didn't
It
speak.
was probably written in Hebrew.
He's better than
Okay.
that, or the other.
8 and 9.
And all the king,
king's men came in, and they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar came even more terrified, and his face grew even more pale. His nobles were baffled.
I love that word baffled. You know, what's a baffle?
it's the thing in a bellows that goes back and forth.
Yep. So,
Or-
what-
Or it stuffs
air.
liquids in a container for flowing.
right. So apply those to the nobles. Apply those.
They just
descriptions.
quivered.
Right. They didn't know what to do. They were
I think
baffled.
I would quiver if all of a sudden the hand started writing stuff on the wall by itself.
Well, maybe they were drunk.
Yeah.
You know,
They
maybe
probably
they
were. They
drunk. That's why we
swallowed
can't
enough
understand the
wine.
words either. So,
Yep.
if someone wants to read 10 and 11, 11's kind of long.
The
The
queen,
queen,
go ahead, Fran.
the queen entered the banquet hall because of the words of the king and his nobles. The queen spoke and said, "O king, live forever, but do not let your thoughts alarm you or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, illumination, insight, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, appointed him chief of the magicians, conjurers, Chaldeans, and diviners."
Okay. So keep in mind that it has been at least 10 years, because remember Nebuchadnezzar left for 7 years. And the vision to Nebuchadnezzar happened before he left. So he was gone for 7 years. He came back briefly,
Uh-huh.
not very long. And then we already heard from the previous chapter that it was the 3rd year of Belshazzar. So it's at least 10 years if you add the 7 and 3. It's probably longer than that
Mhm.
since the last time we've heard from Daniel, or the last time they've heard from Daniel. Okay. Okay, so I forgot what- yeah, 12. I can get that one. He did this because Daniel, and the king called Belteshazzar, that was Daniel's Babylonian name, by the way, Belteshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems.
Mhm.
Man, we need him in government today. Um,
Yeah,
Call for Daniel and he will tell you what the writing means. So 13 and 14.
So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard that you are the spirit of God is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom."
And so what does Daniel do? He goes, "You got that right," pulling on his
Yeah.
suspenders. Yeah. No, he didn't. Okay, he comes in and we get to 15 and 16.
The wise men and the enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell them what it meant, but could not explain it. Now I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will have the third highest rule. That will make you the third highest rule in the kingdom.
Is this starting to sound like another person who started off low and was sold into
Yeah.
slavery pretty much? And but
Gee, I
ended
wonder
up
who that
being-
might be, Joseph.
Joseph.
wonder who that might be, Joseph?
Oh,
Is there a comma in there or not?
Okay, 17, then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself, give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means." Okay. 18 and 19.
This is what it means, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we haven't got there yet. No, he's talking again.
Oh, okay, I thought.
Your Majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled.
Okay. So Nebuchadnezzar, he's talking pretty well of Nebuchadnezzar. So 22 and 23.
What happened to 20 and 21?
Did we skip them?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and read those.
But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit became so proud that he behaved arrogantly, he was opposed from his royal throne, and his glory was taken away from him. He was also driven away from mankind, and his heart was made like that of beasts, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys. And he was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he recognized that the Most High God is ruler over the realm of mankind, and that he sets over it whomever he wishes.
Okay. So, okay. Just a kind of a repetition of what happened to, okay. So now on to 22 and 23.
"But you, the son of
Belshazzar.
have not humbled yourself, though you knew it all. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You have had the goblet from his temple brought to you, and you and your wives and nobles and the Caliban drunk wine with them. You praise the God of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life in all the ways."
Okay, y'all want me to read this?
Go for it.
Sure.
Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote this inscription. This is the inscription that was written. Mene, mene, tekel parsin. Here is what these words mean. Mene, that God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, which Perez is a singular form of parson, okay?
Of what?
Singular form. So parson, mene, mene, tekel parson, parson is plural.
Okay.
Okay, so Perez is singular. Your kingdom. So if Perez means kingdom, what would parson mean?
Kingdoms.
Kingdoms. Okay. So your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So, okay. 29 and
Don't you
30.
know what this reminds me so
31.
much of? When the people of Israel wanted a king, and they demanded a king, God said, you will be sorry.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And you look at all the kings in history, they sure had got arrogant and righteous and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't just to the Jews that this happened.
Mhm.
It happened to all of them.
Correct, but the
So-
Jews were God's chosen.
Yeah, but it happened to all of them. So, and of course, the famous one, of course, is Louis, who said, "I am the state."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so someone want to read 29 through 31?
Then at Belteshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius and the Media took over the kingdom at the age of 62.
Okay, so Darius.
That's very.
So how long was Daniel third highest ruler in the kingdom?
That very
Then
night.
one day.
Just a few hours. Now you see why he didn't care to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long was he the second highest ruler in the kingdom? Less than that.
Yeah.
Because he never became the first highest ruler because Darius
They
Mede
killed
became
him.
that. So now Darius the Mede, that's it for today. Next week, we're gonna be in chapter 6 and then into 9. Sorry, I thought we were getting to the lion's den. That's in chapter 6. So
Okay.
it was the handwriting on the wall, so I gotta go back and change that. But,
Man, are you okay?
Fine.
You're fine.
So Darius is going to be pretty beneficial, but keep in mind, look how old he is. He's 62 when he's taken. So he's not going to be in charge very long when
No.
Cyrus ends up taking over for him. And Cyrus is going to be very beneficial too. In fact, in one of, I think it was Jeremiah, they actually, was it Jeremiah? Isaiah. Isaiah was written at 3 different time frames.
Mhm.
Well, in third Isaiah or second Isaiah, we find out that Cyrus was named as God's messenger. Although he wasn't named specifically, but it was very much implied that that was Cyrus. And so Darius and Cyrus are actually pretty beneficial to the Jews, and it's under them that they're going to get to go back home. So we've got some good things coming, although we still have some bad things coming. Keep in mind that, I said the lion's den. Well, guess what happens in chapter 6? So Darius makes some rules that, things have changed. People aren't, they're trying to figure it out, and Daniel and his 3 friends end up in some hot water, almost literally. So,
Should not have interpreted those.
right. So
things.
we're going to end it for today. Thank you for joining us, Ann. I'm glad that we're able to get this back going and that you're able to join us online. We're
Thank
sorry to hear that you are in pain, but we're glad that you're better today.
Thank you. I am too.
And we'll try to do this next week. And next week, I'm actually gonna have Shauna send out the web link again. That's one thing I forgot. I also have to go get a HDMI cable. I'm borrowing the one from the sound booth right now because this new computer is wonderful. Oh my gosh, this new computer, but it does not have a
The same connection.
right
USB?
no a VGA cable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
video
That
graphics.
figures, if it can screw it up with a new model, they'll
But,
do it.
oh, it's wonderful. It's got so many USB ports on it.
It
I could plug in all kinds of things. And we'd
Yay.
never be able to
Understand,
watch.
Fred's
So,
idea of technologies is 2 tin cans in a string.
so,
One thing is when you turn it on, it's supposed to work.
yes. and
Yeah, me too.
it
I
did
agree.
immediately.
When it doesn't, it makes me mad.
So,
Yeah, and I can.
okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and end this. Ann, you have a wonderful day.
Michael, I accidentally signed up for the COVID shot on your thing. I thought that was the one I had to sign up to get into the church, but I've already had my shot, so I don't need it.
Oh, well, that's quite all right. If you don't show up, it'll just go to someone else.
Okay.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
Give it to somebody else.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and end this, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Here, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Good luck this week, Michael.
Yeah, oh, that's right, yes.
So next week we need to bring citizenship.
What's this week?
150.
Is it this one?
150.
Is it this one you have, because next
I
week?
need to remember.
The
to remind
26th.
her.
26th.
I'm preaching on the 25th, and then right
And
after
you
church,
go-
taking off to go up there, staying overnight, and having the interview on the 26th.
Mhm.
So,
Question, what happened to Jane?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Jane. What happened?
She okay?
I say this at the risk of,
It will not leave this room.
no, it's not that. Jane and Karen are at each other's throats about it. Well, you know, it's a case of it happened and then 4 hours later is when Karen found out. So
What
she
happened?
wasn't very.
She fall?
Jane went to the doctor's office. She had
Uh-huh.
parked in the parking lot and that little shuttle or whatever that comes around to get her, she
Yeah.
got ready to get up into that, missed the step, fell.
Oh.
Hit the back of her head on
Oh.
the pavement.
Ooh.
She went on into her doctor's appointment. The
Mhm.
doctor ordered a CT scan for her.
Mhm.
And she went in. They wouldn't do it, said she had to schedule it. She got it
Oh,
scheduled.
for
the next-
Pete's
She got it
sakes.
scheduled for the next day. Went home. Drove herself home.
Drove herself home.
Then took a 4-hour nap.
Oh, no, oh, no.
Then got up, called Karen and told her everything.
Oh, okay,
dear.
this is why Karen got, okay, I
Uh,
can,
A little out of
So,
joint,
yeah,
yeah.
I can see.
so,
Boy.
That's because sometimes kids become a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but right now my kid is hovering. over.
it'll be okay. She
Yeah,
had the
I'm just
CT,
sitting with
everything's
my
fine.
parents and-
But you worry, you worry.
That's
Oh,
what my
yeah,
phone was
worry.
about from my brother. Stay with my parents now.
All righty.
We have to go home and entertain ours.
Mm.